Hello and welcome to Medcast Plus. I am your host, Dr. Jack Braha. Here we feature local healthcare providers and physicians to help give us some great tips to stay healthy here in Brooklyn and beyond. Today we're taking a little bit of a turn. We have a guest who is a medical student. He's not yet really a healthcare provider. He's not a physician yet, but he is certainly a physician in training here in Brooklyn. Currently, our guest, Mr. Max Cohen, or as we say in the hospital, student doctor Max Cohen is here. He is a student here in Brooklyn at Brookdale Hospital, and we would like to have a different type of a show today where we focus on students who might be watching today or our young ones out there who might be interested in a career in medicine, not just becoming a doctor, but a nurse or other healthcare provider. And I've had the honor of knowing Max for some time. He was one of our students in our practice at some point. And so I want to welcome Max Cohen to our show today. Welcome, Max. Thank you for coming here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It is a different show today. We are not going to give out much healthcare advice. We're not going to cover any significant healthcare topics like prostate cancer or colon cancer. But really, we want to shed light on what it takes and what it's like to become a doctor. And I think I remember what it was like. It was 15 years ago when no, it's longer now. I'm not going to say my age. But it is longer since I started medical school. And I recall being nervous, and I recall all the forms and the tests and the studies and college and how stressful it is. And for our viewers out there today, the moms and dads, sisters, brothers, and the students out there who want to know what it's like to become a physician because someone in the family is considering it, let's talk a bit about the process. Tell me, how did you even decide that you wanted to become a physician?
So this is actually a pretty interesting story. I actually wanted to be a lawyer. I started out
the enemy of doctors for many ways, right? Okay.
Yeah.
We don't get along all the time.
I know, it's kind of ironic, actually.
Ironic, you wanted to be a lawyer.
I wanted to be a lawyer, and in my sophomore year of high school, I was walking through the atrium in my high school, and one of the deans pulled me over and said, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I don't have a class right now." So she said, "Well, there's a medical group, a few doctors are here speaking, and why don't you go sit in?" So I said, "Okay." I mean, I don't even know what persuaded me to, but I went into that meeting. I heard some doctors speak. For the most part, I don't even remember what they said, but I just remembered the passion that they had, for helping others, the smile on their faces, talking about what they do. And that kind of spoke to me, and that led me into getting a volunteer position at Monmouth Hospital that following summer and shadowing a doctor there, and kind of got the ball rolling on things.
Okay, so here you are in high school, you step into some room where a bunch of doctors fascinated you, and you decide maybe this is for me. So as you moved out of high school and into college, where did you go to your undergraduate?
So I did my undergraduate education at Brooklyn College.
Brooklyn born, Brooklyn
Yes,
educated.
Exactly.
So in Brooklyn College, you decided I'm going to go what we call pre-med, which really is no longer a major. It used to be that you would get to college and say, "Hi, counselor, I am pre-med," but no longer in many schools is pre-med a major per se. You have to pick a major. What did you focus on?
Yeah, so actually, a bunch of people have always just assumed that I majored either in chemistry or biology. I was on the pre-med track, but I did major in psychology. It was a field that really spoke to me, trying to understand the mind and how everything works, and all the different choices and decisions that we make in life. And I felt that it would be a good path to put myself on for a profession that's going to be talking to people and trying to get them to make decisions for their own health and hopefully their life.
Well, it's an interesting point. And I think that's really important, that folks and prospective students out there realize they don't always have to pick biology to go to medical school. And it's important to spend the 4 years in college chasing a passion while also taking your pre-medical requisite courses that prepare you for the MCAT, which is the medical admissions test, that you can major in studio art like one of my partners had. I majored in economics. I found that a fascinating science, economics. And I also was able to complete my pre-medical requisites just like you did, majoring in psychology. So it's important for the viewers out there to realize that, from the day after high school and you start college, you don't have to pick being a scientist from day one. You can major in journalism. You can major in English literature and still go to medical school. You could major in dance. So you were a psychology major, and you spent all 4 years at Brooklyn College?
I actually graduated in 3.5 years, but yes, they were all
That good of a student graduates in 3.5 years. Okay, so during the 3.5 years, you took your prerequisites. What was it that kept pushing you to pursue this passion, this crazy passion of spending, the early part of your adult life in school? What else motivated you?
So there was actually a point where I was debating whether this was, the field that I wanted to go into, and I considered psychology as a profession. I still believed, it was part of the sciences, and the sciences were what intrigued me. But I think ultimately, what drove me down this direction was always remembering the passion that I saw in those doctors' faces and, in their voices, the ability to help people for the rest of your life and make an impact that's not just on the person that you're treating, but their entire family.
Yeah,
and I think that's
true.
That's kind of what drove me.
Yeah, as a physician, as a doctor of medicine, you really have that ability to change someone's life. And when you realize it, or you take a step back, you realize that you're not just treating the patient, it's everyone around them. And it's more than that. If they own a business, it's their employees, right? Keeping someone healthy keeps their business intact, keeps their employees. So you're really affecting a lot of people as a physician. So that's what I hear from a lot of medical students, is that I wanted to make a difference, and this was the way my calling was, to make a difference. So in high school, you decided, some people are told they're going to become a doctor, right? My mom apparently held me in the rocking chair and told me to become a plastic surgeon from when I was just born. So that was the only time I listened to my mom, possibly, but I'm not a plastic surgeon.
Well, what's funny is when I was a child, and I didn't want to be a doctor at that point, but from, early on when I was going to see my own pediatrician, I would step into his shoes before he would enter the room, while we were waiting, and I'd, get up and look at my brother's nose, and I'd say his famous phrase, nose please, other nose please.
So you were playing doctor even before you knew you'd become a doctor.
Yeah.
So once you make the decision, hey, I'm going to dedicate, in many cases, over 10 years of training and education to become a physician, because it's 4 years of college in reality, and medical schools in general another 4 years, so that's 8 years. After that, there's internship, there's residency, there's fellowships. In my case, I spent 14 years becoming a physician.
I just tell people I started my career for life.
Yes, and that's exactly the point I'm getting to, is that this is not really a job. This is a lifestyle. This is a life. And for the viewers out there that are watching, when you decide, for the young ones especially, that, hey, I want to become a physician, that's your life. It's not so much a job. It's a title. It's like being called Mr. or Mrs. It's doctor. It really is something serious. So in college now, as you get towards the end of college, you have to apply to medical school. And in general, that occurs after the third year, or during the end of the third year, or early fourth year. What was that process like for you? How was it to start applying to medical school after taking what we call the MCAT, of course?
Yeah, so that whole process is, well, it's a process, and it can get quite frustrating at times. There's always a test to get to the next step. Applications, you need interviews again, you need letters of recommendation and personal statements, and building up your resume and making sure that you have extracurricular activities, and kind of you want to build yourself into the whole package. And so that whole time frame between filling out the application and actually getting an interview, or even just submitting the application, you're wondering, did I do enough? Can I go back in time and change something? Should I have done that? Can I have gotten myself more involved in some research? So it's a frustrating time, but it's also rewarding, and you take it day by day, and you just remind yourself constantly what you're doing it for. And
I recall the anxiety also.
Yeah.
No, it is an anxious period. I applied, I took my MCATs 2 weeks before 9/11, the tragedy here in New York,
yeah.
and in other parts of the country. So mail was somewhat delayed then. And I remember anxiously checking. Now I think things are delivered electronically, probably, and email. Mm-hmm. But back then we waited for this piece of paper. And the MCAT score was your ticket to ride. And when you opened up the envelope, if you had a certain score or higher, you knew you had a fighting chance, because medical school applications are tough. If I was told when I was applying by a dean of admissions that if you took all the files, the thousands of applications, and threw them up in the air, and whatever landed on the desk he would accept, he said every application would be fantastic. Because everyone applying, by the time you get to this period through organic chemistry, biology, chemistry, MCATs, by the time someone survived all that, they're pretty well accomplished.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned some extracurricular activities. What are some suggestions you have for the viewers today if they're looking to get into the medical field, whether it's becoming a physician or becoming a nurse? What are some of the extracurricular activities one can do to boost their application or to even get more experience?
Yeah, so there are really, I mean, endless amounts of things that you can do. Getting involved in your local community charities is one thing to start. Getting involved with different organizations. For example, I spent a good deal amount of time with children with special needs, getting involved as a camp counselor, but then volunteering throughout the year as well, putting together events and summer tournaments to raise money and fundraisers. But then also things that we don't usually think about, like directing a blood drive, which really doesn't take too much of your time. You kind of, you know, blood centers are begging for blood constantly, and so all you really have to do is reach out to them, tell them, you know, I want to start a local blood drive in my community. And those things go a long way. And you know, if you get to do that a few times, it shows your commitment to something, and especially something that's can save a life.
Yeah, volunteering is important because you'll be giving back to society, in my opinion, your whole career as a physician. Okay, your whole career as a physician, you are going to be doing something to contribute to society. It's not all about cashing a paycheck, and volunteering is important. During my high school years, I volunteered. Funny you mentioned Monmouth Medical Center in Long Branch, New Jersey, where I grew up. A fabulous hospital on the shore where I volunteered a lot of time, and it was good because number one, you got a free exposure per se, a trial to see what it's like to work in a hospital, which is essentially what you will do the first many years of your career as a physician. And you got to give back a bit. And I think volunteering at a local hospital, for our viewers out there in Brooklyn, we have a number of hospitals out there that if you make a phone call, they have a volunteer office at nearly every hospital out there. At our hospital, Mount Sinai, Brooklyn, we have a volunteer program and we have many volunteers. Getting exposure while also giving back is important. It is important to give back to society. It's not about take, it's about giving back. And as a physician, you learn that very, very early. Waking up in the middle of the night to run in and help somebody, leaving a wedding, leaving a dinner, leaving a date sometimes, leaving your kids to go and help someone in need. And so I'm happy you mentioned about giving back as a very good extracurricular activity, volunteering locally in the community here in Brooklyn. Please, for the viewers out there, call a local hospital and just start volunteering and helping out. It'd be a huge help to the hospitals. What about research? We talk about being a scientist, not just being a physician. Physicians are care providers, but also scientists. Getting into the lab or research is important too. You would say some advice to some of our viewers?
Yeah, so you know, there's a trend right now, you know, as per medical students, but even just as a pre-med in college, there's this trend that you need research, and you know, I do have a bunch of friends who are in medical school who had no research. I myself didn't do too much research myself, but you know, I did try and, you know, make the effort to really get myself involved in some of the research while I was still in Brooklyn College. So I got close with the chair of the biology department and did some research with him. And then moving on into medical school, I also was looking towards research. I mean, besides for it being something that's helpful to put down on your resume, it also teaches you, you know, a little bit of humility, a little bit of some of the monotonous work that gets done behind the scenes, especially for drug companies. And just the small little details that are involved.
Yeah, I felt it was, I had an amazing mentor when I was a medical student. That's when I started doing more research. Research meaning you find a problem and you try to find an answer, or you meet somebody who's working on an answer to a problem, or you look back at patients' charts to try to see, well, if everyone who came in with, as one of our recent guests, prostate cancer, well, what was the risk factors? If we go through 10,000 charts, what was out there? And it's tedious, painful work. But at the end of a project, you come up with something and you can contribute to society. Even if you didn't find what you were looking for, you were testing drug A and it never worked. Okay, well, your research simply told everyone, stop going after drug A maybe for this problem and do something else. So for the viewers, research is important.
Yeah, and if I could add just one other thing to that, and I think that this is something also that's really important. One thing that you do learn by doing research, especially if you are heading into the medical field, across all the professions, whether it's nursing, PA, physician, across the board, physical therapist, OT, PT, what you do learn by reading research and by getting involved in research is that sometimes you hear about a research paper that came out that it sounds like that it's just taken as fact, and you learn to actually look into the research and understand what went on behind the scenes, what the variables were, how many people were actually involved in this study, and you start to recognize some maybe flaws, or some things that we take as fact that maybe isn't exactly fact, and it teaches you to just be a better scientist and to look for the truth.
Right, so not just reading the headline of a paper. We see that on the news all the time where they talk about some flashy headline, but when you delve into the actual research paper, the 20 pages behind the title, you realize a lot more, and that sometimes the title is not everything it seems. I call those headliners, people that just read the headline and then spit out the quote, but when you look really into the paper, you realize a lot more to it. And so research is important, extracurricular activities, volunteering in the community, good grades, good board scores. And then here you are, a third-year medical student. Which school are you in now?
So I am in New York Institute of Technology, College of Osteopathic Medicine. It is formerly known as the New York College of Osteopathic Medicine, or NICOM.
Where is it located?
So it's located in Old Westbury in Long Island, New York.
So it's not Brooklyn, but we'll still accept you. Okay. And so you're in school now. Now, for the viewers today watching, especially those interested in medical school, the first 2 years are spent in a classroom.
Yeah, so we call those the preclinical years. Actually at my school there are two curriculums. There's a lecture-based curriculum, and then there's a problem-based curriculum, which we actually have a title to called the Doctor-Patient Continuum. And that's actually the curriculum that I was involved in. And for 2 years, I had a group which changed every single semester with 2 doctors in the room. And we would essentially teach ourselves medicine. Of course, we had the guidance of many doctors to constantly ask questions to, but we didn't attend lecture. Instead, we were given a case, kind of, if you were in a hospital and you had a patient, and we would discuss amongst ourselves, what's going on with this patient. We would act out doctor, act out patient. We would have someone act as the medical scribe. And through the course of, sometimes it was a few weeks, sometimes it was just, a few days, depending on the how rigorous the case was. But we would decide, what do we need to learn in order to solve this case and figure out what's going on for the patient. So we would, choose a few topics, go home, study from the textbook, and then come back and discuss 2 days later for a few hours.
That's a new way of learning.
Yeah.
We're also used to sitting in a lecture hall with 100 or 200 students, watching some slides and someone lecture at us. So this is a new concept that I've seen, the problem-based curriculums where you're handed a problem and go figure it out. And by researching all the different things that it could be, you learn medicine.
Yeah, and what I've gotten from it is, instead of someone telling you a piece of information, and it might spark your interest at the moment, and you might say, wow, that's a cool thing, I'll probably remember that. Usually about probably 2 weeks later, you'll probably think back like, what was it that I was trying to remember? With the problem-based learning track, with this type of curriculum, this type of learning, what you're doing is teaching yourself to make connections. And so you're creating those wirings in the brain to draw associations, make connections. And also, you're thinking about patients from an early stage, and that's the best thing that you can do to help your patients in the future, I think.
And so as I recall back in medical school, the first 2 years were tough. It was sort of like drinking from a fire hose. It's not like college where you take 16 credits. It was almost the equivalent of taking 32 or more credits each semester. And like drinking from that fire hose, you get through those 2 years, and the light at the end of the tunnel, everything you had ever dreamed of, arrives, which is third year. So tell us why third year is the most spectacular part of medical school.
Well, I think you missed just one point, in between.
I skipped over the boards.
You skipped over the B word.
Yeah.
Not the one that others might be thinking of, but
No, the board word.
The board scores, boards. That's the exam that we take typically at the end of second year of medical school, which eventually will be used as one of the factors for applying for residency later on. And so, that period between second year and third year, you're getting ready to take your board exam. Again, you get that nervous, anxious,
But you're already
feeling.
in medical school. You know you're going to be a doctor. So tell us about third year and why it's so important, why it's so exciting for young doctors, young student doctors.
Yeah, so you make it past that point and you enter third year, and now it's the time that you're entering the hospital. You're walking around with doctors and residents and nurses and the entire squad, and everyone's got their white coats on, and you're walking into patients' rooms and you feel kind of important, like you should know something. And it's very rewarding to see how much of the knowledge that you gained in your first and second year actually do its part and play a role while you're walking around and seeing patients in the hospital. And it all comes back to you, and you forget things, but when it comes back, you're like, wow, I remember sitting in that class or talking to that person about it. And it's just rewarding to be on that side of things, talking to a person.
It's where you finally get to see a patient and apply what you learned.
Yeah.
And that's really rewarding, not only because you spent so much time, but you also spent a lot of money.
Yes.
So how much is medical school costing these days?
So medical school for me costs $60,000 a year, roughly. And
that's just for tuition?
Strictly tuition.
Yeah.
That doesn't include textbooks if you need for studying. Obviously, there's online resources now as well.
So
there are
4
question
years.
banks.
4 years.
Yeah.
4 years, $60,000, $250,000.
Yeah.
Plus whatever people spend on college. It's a big investment.
Yeah.
It's important for people out there watching to know that finances should not be an obstacle, right?
Definitely not.
There should be no one out there who says, I can't become a doctor because I don't have the money.
No.
There are programs.
Yes, there are programs, there are scholarships. There are plenty of scholarships out there, maybe not offered by that specific medical school that you're attending, but they're out there, and you just have to know how to look for it. Like I had mentioned before with running blood drives, blood centers are giving $500 scholarships to anyone who runs a blood drive and gets 50 donors. And that's an incentive to not only give back and get involved like we were discussing earlier, but it also helps you towards your education.
Helps fund your future, right?
Exactly.
And then there are the loans, which we all took, at least most of us in medical school, that if you got into medical school, for folks out there watching, don't be afraid of the finance issue, because there are loans available. You'll have to pay them back. But anyone who I know who was qualified to get into medical school and received an acceptance letter, they went. And even if we had no money, we were able to go to medical school because there are government funding loans which are guaranteed by the government. And so if you have the credentials and you have an acceptance letter, almost always these loans are available, correct?
Yes.
They're burdensome. It's a lot of money.
Yes.
But you will be able to seek your dream if you wanted to become a physician and you got an acceptance letter. Finances should not obstruct your decision.
No, it definitely should never get involved in whatever goals you have in life, and definitely if this is your passion and you're doing something that's going to be giving back to people in the long run. You have to sort of believe that you're putting in the money now, but you're going to get back, and you're going to pay back those loans, but you're also going to get back something more, and that's going to be the health of your patients, the smile of them walking out of the office, and nothing.
There's nothing like it.
Price tag.
There's
on
no
that.
price tag on someone saying, thank you made me better. So what are you going to do when you grow up now? We've been talking about how to get into medical school. We've been talking about what it takes during medical school. What are you going to do when you grow up?
So that's the famous question, especially as a third-year medical student. I truly believe pediatrics is my calling. As far as right now, that's where I'm at.
We'll have to bring you back in a couple of years to see what you chose.
Yeah, they say that people change their minds all the time. I know pediatrics wasn't necessarily what I wanted to go into when I first started, but along the way you find where you're most happiest and where your niche is, honestly.
Well, it sounds like you're most happiest is here in Brooklyn, because I know that you're back at Brookdale spending your entire third year, one of our county's greatest and oldest hospitals. I know you're seeing a lot there. So let's talk a little bit about you otherwise outside of medicine, because I know as doctors and student doctors, all we focus on is medicine, and everyone thinks we have no lives outside of here. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of Kings County questions.
Oh, gosh.
Born here or transplanted?
Born here.
Born here. So you've been here your whole life.
I've been here my whole life.
What area of Brooklyn are you from?
I'm from Flatbush area of Brooklyn. Otherwise, different parts. They're close by Gravesend area as well.
Very good. So favorite restaurant in Brooklyn? Is there one? Or are you a home cooking guy?
I'm more of a home cooking guy. You know, my family likes to smoke some meat, and my mom's a great cook.
So the
Gotta give her credit
the
for that.
barbecue in the backyard?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Knicks or Nets?
It's a great question. I'm not so much of a basketball fan, but I was a Knicks fan growing up.
Okay. All right. We'll let you go with that one.
Yankees, though.
You're a Yankee fan?
Definitely New York
Okay.
Yankees.
I'm a Mets fan. We'll let you go.
Let's
so
cut here.
We wish you luck. We wish you luck. It's good to have a Brooklyn-born medical student here now, back in Brooklyn as a medical student, planning on practicing here in Brooklyn as, who knows, maybe a pediatrician. So I want to thank you for watching today. An interesting show shedding light on what it takes to become a doctor, a physician, a medical student. Here with us today, Max Cohen at the New York Institute of Technology, spending some time at local Brookdale Hospital learning how to become a physician. I invite you to visit our website, medcastplus.com, and check out our tools and connect with us on social media. You can call us at 718-510-2103. Stay healthy, Brooklyn. Goodbye.